assigned seat. Silence your cell phones. The program will begin momentarily.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the ring melt ceremony for the class of 2022. I am Kathy Kilner, class of 1990, and the Director of Class Services at the West Point Association of Graduates, and your Master of Ceremony for this event. On behalf of the West Point AOG Chairman, Lieutenant General Retired Joseph D. Francisco, class of 1965, and the AOG CEO and President, Mr. Todd Brown, class of 1985, it is my pleasure to welcome our distinguished guests, the Commandant of the United States Corps of Cadets, Brigadier General Curtis Buzzard, class of 1992, the Command Sergeant Major of the United States Corps of Cadets, Command Sergeant Major Kenneth Killingsworth, and the Dean of the Academic Board, Brigadier General Cindy Jebb, class of 1982. And a very special welcome to our ring donors and their family and friends joining us virtually. Welcome to the 21st Annual Ring Melt Ceremony. We are here today to celebrate the long gray line of West Point graduates. This ceremony brings together several groups of people: the United States Corps of Cadets, graduates and classmates who are tuning in on the live stream to support fellow members of the Long Gray Line, the Herff Jones Ring Company, the ring donors, families, and friends, and I want to thank each of you for being an integral part of this event today. This program couldn't exist without graduates and families who make the decision to donate their loved ones' rings. I'd like to introduce a few of our guests this morning. Lieutenant Colonel Quentin Coleman from the class of 1999. He is the class advisor for the class of 2022 and the regimental tactical officer for 3rd Regiment. Captain Lucas Dunaway and Captain Stein Thorbeck, the class of 2022 officers in charge and the OICs for this year's ring melt ceremony. They are the tactical officers of I-3 and C-3, respectively. And Mac McDarries from Herff Jones. Herff Jones has been selected to make the rings for the class of 2022. We have several cadets here with us today. They are primarily the class officers and the ring and crest chairs for the class of 2022. They will be assisting us by reading the ring donor names and placing the rings into the crucible during our ceremony. I would also like to recognize and thank Vic Glozier from the class of 1985, who is the owner of Elm Press, who for years has donated his time, energy, and resources to support this program. Vic prints all of our materials for this program pro bono every year. Tom and Kim Kavanaugh from Kavanaugh's Jewelers in Newburgh, New York. Kavanaugh's Jewelers graciously removes the stones each year from the donated rings. Thank you. And also I'd like to thank Lance Richardson and the Department of Chemistry and Life Sciences for their support of this program as well. And I would be remiss to not thank Joanne Shipley for her support of the program. And I know that all of our ring donors and families have communicated throughout the year with Joanne. Thank you all. At this time, I'd like to turn the podium over to Cadet Claire Jones. Claire is the ring and crest chair for the class of 2022, and she is going to say a few remarks about the class crest and motto.
On behalf of the class of 2022, I would like to extend a warm thank you to those who have donated their rings or the rings of their loved ones to our class. We understand the magnitude of the decision to donate your ring, and we are extremely grateful that you have chosen to give this piece of yourself or of your loved one in order to grip hands with us. Each ring holds the story of its owner, a story that will now live on and be remembered by the graduates of the class of 2022. Our class motto, "For many stand the few," is a reminder that we have dedicated ourselves to a life of selflessness and courage, as many members of the Long Gray Line have done before us. On our class crest, you will see that our motto is written in Latin, as Pro Multis Pauci Praesidunt. We chose to present the motto in Latin due to its resemblance of our nation's great seal, E Pluribus Unum, which translates to out of many, one. Beyond the motto, each component of the crest has a specific meaning to our class. The eagle dutifully grips the ribbon in his beak, with an olive branch and arrows in hand, just as it is shown on our nation's great seal. Looking to the top of our crest, the hills and river display the view of Trophy Point, so the class of 2022 can always remember the journey through West Point and the place that will propel us into our careers as Army officers. To me, our class crest embodies the qualities that our class has shown a natural affinity towards: strength, solidarity, personal courage, and resilience. Our class has persevered through a unique time at West Point, and I have no doubt that we will continue to persevere through the challenges we face in our careers in the midst of fear and uncertainty. Soon, our class will receive our rings, a treasured item that reminds us of the strength, personal courage, and resilience that is needed to lead our nation's sons and daughters. Today, your ring donations create a tangible link for the class of 2022. And today, my classmates and I are reminded that while we will be leading in the future, we must not forget the rich past of those who have gone before us. Once again, thank you so much for all the ring donations and for forever connecting us in this special way to the Long Gray Line.
Thank you, Cadet Jones. Your heartfelt words express well your class's appreciation to all the contributors to this special event. The West Point Class Ring Memorial Program was originally proposed by Lieutenant Colonel Ron Turner from the class of 1958. He felt strongly that there should be a tangible connection between cadets and graduates, and for him, this connection could be powerfully realized by a program that incorporated the gold from graduates' donated rings that is then melted and used to form the gold for the rings of the upcoming first-class cadets. Fortunately, his idea became a reality, and every West Point class since the bicentennial class of 2002 has been able to grip hands with those graduates from the past whose donated rings are a part of this Ring Memorial Program. In today's ceremony, we have 52 class rings. These rings span the classes of 1916 to 1990. These 52 rings bring the grand total to 669 rings that have been donated to this program to date. Each year is a sample is extracted from the ingot of previously melted rings and then added to the melt the following year to ensure that gold from all ring melts going back to the inaugural ceremony is included in the production of the first class cadets rings. The rings that will be melted today were donated by graduates who contributed immeasurably to our country by their distinguished military careers and lives of achievement and service. The rings include those worn by graduates who fought valorously in the Battle of the Bulge, the Chosin Reservoir, the Quang Ngai province, who designed the A-10's 30-millimeter gun that has protected countless soldiers on battlefields, and who stewarded the profession of arms, including one who served here as the Commandant of Cadets. The rings were worn by graduates who served our country over the past 104 years, wherever they were needed around the globe, in places like China, North Africa, Italy, Korea, Vietnam, the Philippines, Panama, Germany, Turkey, India, Somalia, Macedonia, Kuwait, Iraq, and Afghanistan. For this year's ring melt, the largest contingent of donated rings, 18, came from the class of 1972. The class of 1972 is the 50-year affiliate class for the class of 2022. The 18 rings from the class of 72 also happen to be the most number of rings ever donated in 1 year by one class in the 21-year history of the Ring Memorial Program. Highlighting the legacy of the Long Gray Line today, one of the company ring and crest reps here will be placing the class ring of her grandfather from the class of 1972 into the crucible. You'll also hear from 3 other cadets who have special connections to the ring donors and their families. Before we begin, I'd like to share some notes about the flow of this morning's ceremony. In addition to live streaming this event, we are also professionally videotaping it and taking photos of each person placing a ring into the crucible. We will share those photos and video on social media on our website, and we'll also email them to all of the ring donors. We will proceed in class order with the oldest ring first. A cadet will read the owner name, class year, and the name of the person who will be placing the ring into the crucible. A few of these ring presenters will also be reading remarks from the donors and the families that were sent in. We also have 6 short videos that the families and ring donors sent in this morning. They will be played after their ring is placed into the crucible. At this time, will the presenters for the first 3 rings please step to the on-deck staging area, just my left, your right. They are the classes of 1916, 1939, and 1940. We will now begin the ceremony. Will the president of the class of 2022, Cadet Xavier Williams, please come forward.
Lieutenant Colonel John D. Miley, class of 1916. Placing Lieutenant Colonel Miley's class ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Crystal Zhang.
Lieutenant Colonel Miley's father, grandfather, and 2 great-grandfathers are all West Point graduates. The connections to West Point do not end there, as he also had 2 uncles, a brother, and a nephew who are graduates. Lieutenant Colonel Miley's family lineage includes the classes of 1815, 1823, 1827, 1861, 1887, 1918, and 1946. It was his nephew from the class of 1946 who donated Lieutenant Colonel Miley's ring today.
Lieutenant Colonel Levin L. Lee II, class of 1939. Placing Colonel Lee's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Catherine King.
Colonel Lee's 3 sons sent these remarks. Levin Lane Lee II, class of 1939, wore this ring through the last days of the Horse Cavalry, through combat in Normandy and the Battle of the Bulge, and through 28 years of selfless, honorable service. The ring was well worn in both senses of the term. He married Dorothy Ann Lafferty, daughter of his squadron commander in Horse Cavalry days, and they had 54 years of a loving and devoted relationship. They raised 3 sons, Levin Lane Lee III, Frederick Gray Lee, and James Manley Lee, class of 1972, Army veterans all.
Colonel Nathan L. Chrisberg, class of 1940. Placing Colonel Chrisberg's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Roger Yerger.
Ms. Corinne Chrisberg, the widow of Colonel Chrisberg, asks that the following be read today. Colonel Nathan Chrisberg was born in Moline, Illinois, but spent most of his early years in Albuquerque, New Mexico. His father died when Nathan was just 16 years old. His mother decided that it was important for his older sister to get an education, so financial resources were used to send his sister to Grinnell. With no support, Nathan worked various jobs tutoring students and stocking shelves at a local grocery store to be able to attend the University of New Mexico for 1 year. During that time, he discovered the United States Military at West Point. The rest is history. 21 years in the military, during which he earned a PhD in experimental nuclear physics, followed by a postdoc in propulsion and aerodynamics at the California Institute of Technology. Nathan served as chief engineer of the missile division at Boeing and as general manager of special programs for the space division at General Electric. Nathan always said, "West Point made me," and his professional and personal life reflected the mantra that he lived by: duty, honor, country. Congratulations to the class of 2022.
Colonel Morel E. Marston, class of 1940. Placing Colonel Marston's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is the Vice President of Alumni Support, Mr. Terrence Sinkfield, class of 1999. Mr. Samuel E. H. France, class of 1946. Placing Mr. France's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Catherine Hoffman. Please direct your attention to the screen for a short video from Mr. France's son.
This ring from my father, Samuel Ewing Hill France, class of 46, is given to the class of 22 by his wife, Ethel Albertson France, and 4 children. Myself, Bill France, class of 74, and my sisters Sandy Underwood, Susan Nickel, and Anne France. We honor you, Dad, by adding your ring's gold to this class of 22. You were denied a commission when you graduated from West Point back in June of 46 because the doctors found sarcoidosis on your lungs when you had your pre-commission physical. That was a blow to your life that you never forgot because you always wanted to be an Army officer. Well, Dad, now your gold will be in the rings of the class of 22. And although you only attained the rank of Cadet Sergeant, You'll now be worn by several hundred second lieutenants, and over the years you'll be worn by every rank in the Army up to and including the 4-star rank for those who go that far. So Dad, may you rest in peace, and we salute you and the France family and love you.
I will be followed by the Vice President of our class, Cadet Isaac Ford.
Colonel George E. Hall, Jr., class of 1946. Placing Colonel Hall's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Karen Yan. Colonel Norman R. Rosen, class of 1947. Placing Colonel Rosen's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Ezra Grant.
These remarks were sent by the son of Colonel Rosen. It was a letter that Colonel Rosen sent to his mother during Beast Barracks on July 16, 1944. Mom, I'm riding on a full stomach. We had roast duck, potatoes, peas, dressing, bread and butter, ice cream and fruit cocktail, and orangeade. Delicious. One swell thing is that we get regular dishes with the Academy crest. The first 6 weeks, we don't have much free time. We have to get all of our equipment in shape. We have an hour of athletics every day. We went rowing on the Hudson. It was really beautiful. Once a month, we requisition anything we need for the next month. Every month, $14 gets put in our equipment fund for graduation. They have a very efficient budget system. Right now, I owe them money. I still have to get a full dress coat for $35, an overcoat for $60, gray trousers, another pair of dress shoes, breeches, boots, and a full dress hat. It takes a little while to get on the right side of the lecture, but all these things take care of themselves. The hardest things to keep clean are the white gloves. We wash them ourselves and wear at least one pair every day. We had our first training inspection in dress gray with all the white belts and brass trimmings. I feel just like a store dummy. People come upstate and watch parades and inspection and think they are awfully pretty. If only they knew how much work went into even the simplest parade. Love, Bob.
Colonel Stuart Young, class of 1948. Placing Colonel Young's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Mallory Hearn. Mr. Kenneth A. Main, class of 1949. Placing Mr. Main's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Jane Yan.
These remarks were written by Colonel Stephen C. Main, USA, retired from the West Point class of 1972. Our father loved West Point. His class of 1949 West Point ring was one of his most prized possessions. In fact, it was the only ring he ever wore after graduating. Much to our mother's chagrin, not even a wedding ring adorned his left ring finger, only his class ring. During his fight with an inoperable brain tumor, his finger swelled so much he was in excruciating pain from the ring squeezing his finger. We cut it off, and he had it immediately resized so it fit his now quite larger fingers. This way, his beloved ring remained on his finger until his passing. What to do with the West Point class ring after the owner passes is always an emotional decision for any family, even more so when it was so cherished by its owner. We are certain that adding his ring to the ring melt of the long gray line is absolutely what he would have wanted. The fact that it will go to his son's 50th affiliation class makes it even more special. We thank West Point for the opportunity for our father's ring to become part of all rings to follow in the long gray line.
Mr. Paul S. Ake, Jr., class of 1950. Placing Mr. Ake's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is a friend of the family, Cadet Clayton Picaro, from the class of 2022.
In 1975, my grandparents moved from the suburbs of New York City to Houston, Texas. They were blessed to have amazing neighbors. To the east, the Magners, and to the west, the Akes. And over the years, an enduring friendship developed that is still carried on today between my grandmother and Mrs. Ake. My father was very fortunate to have had the opportunity to spend a lot of time with Mr. Ake. And he told me how much he admired Mr. Ake for his love for his family, the Corps, and history. I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Ake on one of my few visits to Texas. And it was evident how much he cared for the Corps, and he became a great advocate for me and was instrumental into my eventual admissions into the academy. It is a privilege to be here on behalf of his family and for Mr. Ake's devotion to his family, God, our country, and the Corps. The following words were written by Paul Ake III about his father, and they are entitled, "My Father's Ring, He Earned It." My father was very thankful for the education, the lifelong friendships, and the opportunities his time at West Point afforded him. As stated in his TAPS article, next to being married to Betsy, the best experience he ever had was that of commanding an armored cavalry company. And I think, because of his thankfulness, he dedicated his life to serving his family, West Point, and his community. His office was decorated with many reminders of how his life was shaped by West Point. His commission held a prominent position on the wall facing his desk. His hat, the shako, what we refer to as the tar bucket, a statue of a cadet in uniform, and other artifacts served as a constant reminder of his fondness for West Point. But I think his ring is his most constant reminder. I never saw it off his finger. At the time of his death, when it was removed, it was difficult to make out many of the detailed engravings that characterized his rings and the rings of others. Close to the time of his death, I asked him if I could have his ring, and he quickly responded, respectfully and with authority, "No, you did not earn it." The only fitting place for the medal in my father's ring is on the finger of someone who has earned it. So please wear your ring as a constant reminder of what you have earned and who you are, a proud member of the next class of West Point graduates.
I will be followed by our class secretary, Cadet Maggie O'Neill.
Lieutenant Colonel John B. Lewis, class of 1951. Placing Colonel Lewis's ring into the crucible on behalf of the family is Cadet Dylan Hill. Mr. Frank A. Allen III, class of 1952. Placing Mr. Allen's ring into the crucible on behalf of the family is Cadet Jacob DeLuzak. Colonel Robert L. Crosby, class of 1953. Placing Colonel Crosby's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Clara Bartram. Lieutenant Colonel William M. Jewell, Jr., class of 1953. Placing Lieutenant Colonel Jewell's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Kayla Habib.
Mrs. Stephanie Jewell, Colonel Jewell's widow, asked us to read the following. From an early age, Bill was interested in West Point. His godfather, General A.K.B. Lyman, class of 1909, was a family friend and neighbor. It was a close and influential friendship. After attending the University of Washington for 2 years alongside veterans using their GI Bill, Bill applied for an appointment to West Point. He worked hard those 4 years and became more confident of his choice of a military career. He gave his full attention with enthusiasm to the various assignments following graduation. His pride in the Corps and the Code of Honor were his constants. His career highlight was commanding a tank battalion in Germany. He has faithfully supported the Academy for all his years, and it is with his class ring that we, his family, continue the support of the Long Gray Line.
Mr. Robert J. Ellis, class of 1954. Placing Mr. Ellis's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Gabrielle Ingram. I will be followed by our ring and crest chair, Cadet Claire Jones.
Colonel Allen L. Jennings, class of 1954. Placing Colonel Jennings' ring into the crucible on behalf of Colonel Jennings is the class advisor for the class of 2022, Lieutenant Colonel Quentin Coleman, class of 1999. Mr. Robert L. Wallace, class of 1955. Placing Mr. Wallace's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Harrison Mills.
Bob Wallace was an engineer and an avid pilot who loved to fly. This poem, written by John Gillespie McGee Jr., is a tribute to that passion, and it was read at his memorial service. His 4 children thought it would be a fitting tribute for the ring melt ceremony today. Oh, I have slipped the surly bonds of earth and danced the skies on laughter's silvered wings. Somewhere I've climbed and joined the tumbling mirth of sun-split clouds and done 100 things you have not dreamed of. Willed and soared and swung high in the sunlit silence. Hovering there, I've chased the shouting wind along and flung my eager craft through footless halls of air. Up the long, delirious, burning blue, I've topped the wind-swept heights with easy grace, where never lark or ever eagle flew. And, while with silent, lifting mind, I've trod the high, untrespassed sanctity of space, put out my hand, and touched the face of God.
Colonel Alfred M. Mason, class of 1956. Placing Colonel Mason's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Giscard Augustin. Mr. John F. Carroll, class of 1959. Placing Mr. Carroll's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is the President and CEO of the West Point Association of Graduates, Mr. Todd Brown, class of 1985. Colonel William A. Luther, Jr., class of 1959. Placing Colonel Luther's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is the officer in charge of the class of 2022, Captain Lucas Dunaway, class of 2010. I will be followed by our class treasurer, Cadet Luke Stoner.
Mr. Henry L. Malone, class of 1960. Placing Mr. Malone's ring into the crucible on behalf of the family is Cadet Riley Fry.
The family of Mr. Malone sent in these remarks. West Point gave Lou the tools for a career that spanned the globe in the cockpit of an Air Force and Pan Am airplane. He wanted his ring to return here. His family finds comfort knowing his ring has come to the place where his path was determined.
Mr. Frederick C. Bothwell III, class of 1962. Placing Mr. Bothwell's ring into the crucible on behalf of Mr. Bothwell is the Commandant of the Corps of Cadets, Brigadier General Curtis Buzzard, class of 1992. Please direct your attention to the screen for video remarks from Mr. Bothwell.
I'm Fred Bothwell, the son of the class of 1936. As a cadet, I was an English hive and an area bird. On active duty, I served for 7 years as a CAV platoon leader, a tank company commander, and a battalion executive officer. I resigned in 1969 as a major and spent 40 years traveling the world for IBM. I'm now retired in Texas and active in the local West Point Society. My class ring has always meant a great deal to me. I've worn it every day for more than half a century as a visible link to West Point and as a symbol of the bond I share with my classmates, living and dead. I'm proud to see my ring and its memories live on in the rings of the class of 2022 and all future classes, to be worn by cadets at West Point and after graduation, wherever fate may take you. Godspeed to all of you.
Lieutenant Colonel Richard E. Garvey, Jr., class of 1962. Placing Colonel Garvey's ring into the crucible on behalf of the family is Cadet Jack Summers.
These remarks were provided by Colonel Garvey's family. Lieutenant Colonel Richard Edward Garvey, Jr. loved West Point. He taught in the math department and proposed to his bride on the road to the chapel. As a cadet, he was selected to model the short-sleeved white shirt that is still approved for cadets' attire today. He served in Vietnam on 2 tours and committed 21 years of service to his country. He loved what West Point stood for and passed it on. When melanoma took him from us in April of 1994, it was an easy decision for his wife and 4 children to choose West Point as his final resting place. West Point, in no short words, was, well, West Point. A wedding ring is an outward symbol of love and commitment, as is the class ring from West Point, an outward symbol of love and commitment for duty, honor, country. By the giving of his class ring to our future soldiers, he is now tied forever to the long gray line. This is a fitting tribute to his legacy as a proud member of Company K2, the Can-Do class of 1962. Now that Lieutenant Colonel Richard E. Garvey, Jr. lay beneath the hallowed earth of West Point for all of time, so will his ring permeate the graduates of West Point and forever be a part of their future. We, the Garvey family, are so proud of our dad and will continue to strive, even if for just the smallest of measures, to be what he was for us for so many years. Placing Mihan's ring into the crucible on behalf of the family is Cadet Diego Soto.
Colonel Meehan's family sent in these remarks. This ring from Franklin Meehan represents his lifelong quiet pride in being a graduate of the United States Military Academy. His name is engraved on the inside of the ring, and the legacy of West Point was engraved on his heart. Through all the years, Frank acknowledged his debt to the Academy's education, training, and discipline. While on active duty and as a civilian, he benefited from the precepts instilled at West Point. Frank's class ring was a literal touchstone and unconscious daily reminder of the values held dear by him and all the members of the Long Gray Line. In his honor, his family offers Frank's ring as a component of the rings for the class of 2022. May those who wear the new rings enjoy the same pride and honor, and may they experience lives enhanced by the same principles as held by this member of the class of 1962.
I will be followed by our class historian, Cadet Karen Yen.
Lieutenant Colonel Marlon E. Schmidt, class of 1962. Placing Lieutenant Colonel Schmidt's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is the Ring and Crest Chair for the class of 2023, Cadet Jordan Kinkle. Mr. Gary K. Klumenzer, class of 1963. Placing Mr. Klumenzer's ring into the crucible on behalf of the family is Cadet Maggie O'Neill. Mr. Omar E. Rude, Jr., class of 1965. Placing Mr. Rude's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Thomas Hilt.
Lori Larson, Omar's sister and personal representative, sent us these remarks about her brother. Omar was deeply proud of his children, Erica and Charles Rude, and he was always there for them. Omar was known for his brilliant intellect, his kind and generous heart, his loyalty as a friend, and his love of his family and his country. He was a very proud member of the West Point class of 1965. Blessed be his memory.
Mr. John T. Thomason, class of 1965. Placing Mr. Thomason's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Isaac Ford. I will be followed by our Class Information Systems Officer, Cadet Jacob DeLuzak.
Colonel Terry G. Stoll, class of 1966. Placing Colonel Stoll's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Jenna Bostick. Mr. Joseph J. Waldhaus, class of 1971. Placing Mr. Waldhaus's ring into the crucible on behalf of Mr. Waldhaus is Cadet Malachi Williams from Company H3.
Mr. Waldhaus asked me to read a quote today that can be found on page 3 of the class of 1971's Howitzer. As a man reflects on 4 years, he forms a collage of memories that becomes but a shadow of his existence. Hidden in this shadow is a powerful feeling that each man adopts in his own way. This feeling slowly becomes a force that is best described by the words of Tennyson: to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield.
Colonel Randall D. Bookout, from our 50-year affiliate class, the class of 1972. Placing Colonel Bookout's ring into the crucible on behalf of Colonel Bookout is Cadet Rachel Orr from Company B3. Mr. Kenneth E. Brockman, class of 1972. Placing Mr. Brockman's ring into the crucible on behalf of Mr. Brockman is Cadet Callie Kane from Company I-1. I will be followed by the ring and crest chair for the 1st Regiment, Cadet Edward Owens.
Lieutenant Colonel John R. Kraus, class of 1972. Placing Colonel Kraus's ring into the crucible on behalf of Colonel Kraus is Cadet Kevin Vrablik. Colonel Roland A. Desert, Jr., class of 1972. Placing Colonel Desert's ring into the crucible on behalf of Colonel Desert is Cadet Dante DeAngelis from Company E3. Please direct your attention to the screen for remarks from Colonel Desert.
My classmates and I served our country. A byproduct of that service is the deep friendships that we formed. In getting trained and ready for the outbreak of war, we came to know ourselves and each other better than we would have otherwise. Realistic conditions brought character traits out into the open for everyone to see. Sometimes the traits were uncomplimentary, and so one learned humility, perhaps the essential trait for a leader. Another byproduct of our service is learning the relative importance of aspects of life. Serving the nation helps one to realize the unimportance of prestige that may accrue to social standing, and to appreciate, above all, the singular value of honor, as well as the freedom to practice one's faith and the opportunity to raise a family in safety and security. May God bless West Point, the classes of 72 and 22, and the Long Gray Line, and God bless America.
Lieutenant Colonel Stephen M. Dugan, class of 1972. Placing Lieutenant Colonel Dugan's ring into the crucible on behalf of the family is Cadet Xavier Williams. Dr. William T. Fenema III, class of 1972. Placing Dr. Fenema's ring into the crucible on behalf of Dr. Fenema is Cadet Luke Sanders from Company A1. Please direct your attention to the screen for short remarks from Mr. Fenema.
Greetings from a member of your affiliation class, the class of 1972, proud and true. I'm Butch Fenema, and I started my affiliation with your class back in 2018 with the distribution of the dog tags, and I also did the march back with you from Camp Buckner. It was about that time at Camp Buckner that I decided I wanted to put my ring into the ring melt so that it would be a part of the ring melt for my affiliation class and your class. The ring is only a symbol, but it's a powerful symbol. And it's also a source of great joy, and I hope that you enjoy your ring just as much as I enjoyed mine. You already know that the ring has the Academy crest on one side and your class crest and motto on the other. While you're at West Point, you'll learn more about the Academy crest, its symbolism, and its importance. After graduation, you will learn a lot more about your class motto, your class crest, and your classmates. Trust me on that one. And I hope that you learn quickly that when you stand, make sure you stand when it's important, not simply when it's convenient. And when you stand, remember that you will often stand only with the few. As a son of an earlier day, I salute you, you sons and daughters of today. And I look forward to seeing you at graduation 2022. It's not that far away.
Mr. Russell B. Hall, class of 1972. Placing Mr. Hall's ring into the crucible on behalf of Mr. Hall is Cadet Luke Stoner. I'll be followed by the Ring and Crest Chair for the 2nd Regiment, Cadet Kevin Vrablick.
Colonel Robert F. Holland, class of 1972. Placing Colonel Holland's ring into the crucible on behalf of Colonel Holland is Cadet Cole Chappell from Company A3. Mr. Douglas M. Hoon, class of 1972. Placing Mr. Hoon's ring into the crucible on behalf of Mr. Hoon is Cadet Thorin Jean from Company B4. Mr. Joseph A. E. Ivy III, class of 1972. Placing Mr. Ivy's ring into the crucible on behalf of Mr. Ivy is Cadet Edward Owens from Company E1. Captain Harvey R. Jokinen, class of 1972. Placing Captain Jokinen's ring into the crucible is his granddaughter from class of 2022, Cadet Valentina Vincent.
My grandfather, Harvey Jokinen, graduated in the class of 72, our 50-year affiliate class. He was tragically killed in an air accident while serving in Germany only 5 years after graduation. I have no doubt in my mind that this is exactly what he wanted to be done with his ring. Even though I never got the opportunity to meet him, I will now always have a reminder of him with me. I need only look down at my ring for that reminder. I also want to give a special thank you to Colonel Retired Joe Adamczyk for telling me so many stories about my grandfather and for his relationship with him while at the academy and after graduation. Thank you.
Dr. Thomas B. Nelson, class of 1972. Placing Dr. Nelson's ring into the crucible on behalf of the family is Cadet Claire Jones. I will be followed by the Ring and Crest Chair for 3rd Regiment, Cadet Malachi Williams.
Major General Eric T. Olson, class of 1972. Placing Major General Olson's ring into the crucible on behalf of General Olson is Cadet Rebecca Buchel from Company A2. Major J. E. Rossi, class of 1972. Placing Major Rossi's ring into the crucible on behalf of Major Rossi is Cadet Shyla Thornton from Company C1. Colonel Jeffrey L. Schreppel, class of 1972. Placing Colonel Schreppel's ring into the crucible on behalf of Colonel Schreppel is Cadet Kirby Horn from Company C2. Colonel Stephen J. Skoog, class of 1972. Placing Colonel Skoog's ring into the crucible on behalf of Colonel Skoog is Cadet Chloe Schretzman from Company D3. Lieutenant Colonel William C. Smith, class of 1972. Placing Colonel Smith's ring into the crucible on behalf of Colonel Smith is Cadet Sam DeMio from Company D1. I will be followed by the ring and crest chair for the 4th Regiment, Cadet Thorne John.
The next ring was donated by an anonymous donor from the class of 1972. It was donated in memory of all the members of the class of 1972 whose course on Earth is run. Placing the ring into the crucible on behalf of the donor is Cadet Emma San Martin from Company F4. Mr. Brian Corky S. Messner, class of 1979. Placing Mr. Messner's ring into the crucible on behalf of his father is Cadet Thomas Messner. Please direct your attention to the screen for a short video from Corky Messner.
Hi there, I'm Corky Messner, West Point class of 1979, top of the line. Each summer, some of my classmates and I have a reunion here at my home, and we've carved this board, and this board demonstrates the bond that we have. The ring also signifies that bond, and I'm so glad that I've been able to contribute my ring for your ring melt ceremony, and I'm so proud of my son, Cadet Thomas Messner, who's putting the ring into the crucible. And I also want to give a shout out to Cadet Cameron Thompson, who I coached in youth baseball. I'm proud of each and every one of you. I know you will do us proud, and God bless you and Godspeed.
Mr. Charles R. Beard, class of 1982. Placing Mr. Beard's ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is Cadet Elizabeth Ernst.
The Beard family sent us these remarks. Rick Beard grew up playing with green plastic army men in his backyard in Missouri. It became his childhood dream to attend the United States Military Academy and to command a tank unit in Germany. After his Army career, Rick went on to other accomplishments, but he always looked back at his time here at West Point as the beginning of his success.
Colonel Michael J. Peffers, class of 1982. Placing Colonel Peffers' ring into the crucible on behalf of his family is his classmate, the 14th Dean of the Academic Board, Brigadier General Cindy R. Jebb. Please direct your attention to the screen for a message from another of Colonel Peffers' classmates.
Greetings, class of 2022. I'm retired Colonel Dean Stoddard. Mike Peffers had been one of my closest friends since we were plebes together in Company B1. If Mike could send you a message from the ranks of the ghostly assemblage of the long gray line, it would be this: you will learn much at West Point. But what really gets embedded in our souls are the values in our motto and the strong, loyal bonds between classmates. Mike cherished the men and women of the class of 1982, the select few, and he would urge you to always treasure the lifelong friendships you are forming now in the class of 2022. For the many stand the few. The gold that will flow into your ring from Colonel Peffers is an honor. Wear it with pride, knowing that you grip hands with a loyal soldier who loved West Point and dedicated his life to duty, honor, country. Go Army, beat Navy.
Mr. Lloyd M. McClure, class of 1990. Placing Mr. McClure's ring into the crucible on behalf of the family is a close family friend, Cadet Reese Warnes.
I am honored to represent Mr. Trey McClure's family and friends today. Mr. McClure was a classmate and roommate of my dad's here at West Point, and they remained very close friends until Trey's death in 2019. Mr. McClure was forever grateful for his West Point education and the many wonderful friends that he made here. He talked about West Point all the time. Having known us our entire lives, Trey was very supportive and encouraging to both my brother, Riley, class of 2020, and myself, when we each decided to attend West Point. It is deeply meaningful to me and my family that I will carry a small portion of Mr. McClure's The Proud and Mighty class of 1990 ring in my class of 2022 ring. Thank you.
I will be followed by the West Point Association of Graduates Director of the Class Service, Ms. Kilner.
Cadet Williams, if you come forward. The Legacy Gold. Inside the cup that Cadet Williams is holding are gold shavings known as the Legacy Gold. The Legacy Gold contains trace elements of gold from every ring that has been donated, from 617 rings donated over the past 20 years, spanning the classes of 1896 to 2001. These rings were worn by graduates who served in the Army, the Marine Corps, the Air Force, and the Coast Guard. The graduates served our nation in armed conflicts around the globe. In the Philippines, the Mexican expedition of 1916, both world wars, Korea, the Dominican Republic, Vietnam, Panama, the Gulf War, Somalia, Bosnia, Iraq, and Afghanistan. The oldest ring is part of the Legacy Gold, belonged to Colonel Percy Myers Kessler, class of 1896, who fought in the Philippines insurrection, and whose son and grandson also graduated from the academy. The newest ring was recently donated by the spouse, also a West Point graduate, of a 2001 graduate. The Legacy Gold rings include gold from 9 four-star generals, from Lieutenant General James Gavin, class of 1929, from Vietnam prisoner of war Bill Archuri, class of 1970, and from a Medal of Honor recipient Frank Stanley Reesner, class of 1962. Ever since the United States Military Academy was established in 1802, its graduates have been tested in the crucible of combat and proven themselves to be leaders of character for our nation. West Point graduates have consistently lived and often died for our cherished values of duty, honor, and country. In a moment, the Legacy Gold will be added to the newly donated class rings that are already in the crucible, which will then be taken away and subjected to intense fire. The gold from 669 graduate rings from 1896 to 2001 will melt and merge together. Later, that gold will be purified and forged into the West Point rings for the class of 2022. The Ring Memorial Program is a tangible sign of the enduring bonds of the Long Gray Line. May the service and sacrifice of the ring donors remain physically and symbolically with the class of 2022 as they proudly wear their class rings. Placing the Legacy Gold into the crucible is the class president, Cadet Xavier Williams. Thank you, Cadet Williams. This concludes the initial portion of our ceremony this morning, and I now have a few brief administrative remarks. Before we go upstairs for the luncheon, we'll have a brief photo session on the stairs right behind the table. Once the photos are taken, Cadet Claire Jones, the Ring and Crest chairman, and Captain Dunaway will take the rings to Bartlett Hall to be melted. After the lunch, we are going to assemble back here in Crest Hall. Cadet Jones, when she comes back, will bring not only the gold bar, but she will also bring a video that was just made of the melting of the gold. Photos are going to be taken, as I said, behind the ring table. The first photo will have all individuals who presented a ring today. The second photo will have just the members of the class of 2022. Our photographer, Erica Norton, will be taking these photos. I ask that you please allow her to get her photos first, and then others may take photos as well. After the gold bar is presented later today, we'll also take the same photos of the group with the gold bar. Our luncheon will begin in approximately 10 minutes after the photos. Please come forward for the photos. Thank you. Welcome back. I hope you all enjoyed your lunch for those in attendance and for those joining us via the live stream. We hope that you enjoyed the videos that we included during the break. Please direct your attention to the screen to view what just occurred in Bartlett Hall.
And when our work is done, our course on earth is run. May this be said, well done. Be thou at peace.
Thank you, Cadet Jones and Captain Dunaway, and thank you for the video team for doing such a great job on the video. Without any further ado, Cadet Williams is going to say a few remarks before presenting the gold bar to Herb Jones. Will you please come forward, Cadet Williams, to accept our gift?
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the class of 2022, thank you for your ring donations, and family members who are joining us virtually today, thank you for your 52 ring donations. Thank you for entrusting the ring donor's legacy to us. This ceremony symbolizes the unity of the past and the present, while serving as a beautiful display of endurance to the long gray line. Though this tradition of the class ring has existed for 186 years, like many of my classmates, I am the first member of my family to earn this class ring. For my family, this ring symbolizes something more cool than a jewel we got from our school. It speaks to the determination of our ancestors, the persistence of our parents, and the endless support of our friends. So, when formulating my remarks, I couldn't help but consider the thoughts of the two people who I knew truly valued the value of a ring, my parents. My mother Angela and father Tim, who ironically turned 52 last week, did not graduate from the institution, but you would know that if you saw their Facebook posts, their car, and all the cool gear they have from here. I found myself compelled to ask them what their rings meant to them. After a slight pause, they answered. Our rings serve as a reminder of the highs and lows, tears and cheers, and even times we considered leaving but stuck it out. Our rings showed the world that we are committed to something far greater than ourselves. We are committed to each other. And through this commitment, we have vowed to accept the many responsibilities that come along with wearing this ring. My classmates and I look forward to receiving our rings in August. And after we don those rings, may we constantly be reminded of the devotion to this institution, loyalty to this nation, eternal victories against Navy, and love for those who have worn and those who wear these rings today. Like many of you, this will be the first ring that I will wear, but in it dwells hundreds of smiles, thousands of stories, and infinite meaning. For this ring shares the gold of revolutionary leaders, firm teachers, respected warriors, beloved parents, and even joyous children. Today, in the spirit of willing devotion to duty, honor, and country, we are now eternally linked, no longer separated by space and time, to thousands of individuals that have also made this vow. Your sacrifice of this ring donation is a precious gift to our class, and we do not take it for granted. With your donations, we simply say, I do. We vow to maintain the expectations to work together cohesively, to accomplish every task, assignment, and mission, demonstrating the ability to learn, grow, and to maintain the honor of this Corps, as so many have done before us. Again, thank you so much for your ring donations and your participation in the special milestone for our class. May God continue to bless this institution, the Long Gray Line, and the United States of America.
Thank you, Cadet Williams. Will Mac McDarries from Herff Jones please come forward to receive the gold ingot from the class of 2022? So this concludes our ceremony today. Thank you to the ring donors. Without your support, this program would not be possible. Thank you. If everyone would come forward for some photos. So thank you.